The vast emptiness of space stretched out before the Serenity Arc 3 as it glided through the void, its sleek hull gleaming under the distant light of foreign stars. The massive passenger vessel, a marvel of Galactic Council engineering, carried over 5,000 souls toward Varsith Prime, a newly terraformed planet in the Varsith system that promised opportunity and adventure for those brave enough to settle there. In the maintenance deck, tucked away from the opulent passenger quarters and the bustling crew areas, Alaric Blackwood sat hunched over his workstation. His calloused fingers danced across the holographic display as he monitored the ship's countless systems. At 43, Alaric was neither young nor old by Earth standards, but his experience made him invaluable to the GC Maintenance Corps. His salt and pepper hair was perpetually disheveled, and permanent worry lines had etched themselves across his forehead after decades of troubleshooting crises across the galaxy. "System check complete. All parameters normal," the ship's AI announced in its soothing feminine voice. Alaric grunted in acknowledgement, not bothering to look up. Unlike many of his colleagues who engaged with the AI as though it were human, Alaric maintained professional detachment. To him, the AI was just another tool, albeit an incredibly sophisticated one. "You know, some people actually respond when spoken to," came a voice from behind him. Alaric swiveled in his chair to find Lena Vosk leaning against the doorframe, her arms crossed over her GC uniform. At 30, Lena represented the new generation of GC engineers, brilliant, tech-savvy, and entirely dependent on artificial intelligence. "I respond when people speak to me," Alaric replied with a half-smile. "The AI doesn't get offended." Lena rolled her eyes. "It's called courtesy, Blackwood, something you Earth types seem to struggle with. And yet here I am, keeping your ship running while you chat with machines." Their banter was familiar territory. Despite their differences in approach, there was mutual respect between them. Lena pushed off from the doorframe and approached his workstation. "What ancient tech are you tinkering with today?" she asked, peering over his shoulder at the holographic displays. "Just routine maintenance checks. The navigation system had a minor fluctuation during the last jump." Lena's eyebrows rose. "That's the third fluctuation this month. Could be a pattern forming." "That's what I'm trying to determine," Alaric said, his eyes returning to the data streams. "But the diagnostic program can't find anything wrong." "Have you tried running a level 4 scan? The new protocol might catch something the standard diagnostics missed." Alaric nodded. "First thing I did, still nothing." Lena's lips pursed in thought. "Strange. Well, Captain Darien wants all senior staff for a briefing in 20 minutes. We're approaching the Kalidasa belt, and you know how he gets about asteroid fields. Even though the automated systems can navigate them in their sleep," Alaric said with a smirk. "Even though," Lena confirmed. "See you there." As she left, Alaric returned to his work, but his mind lingered on the navigation fluctuations. They were minor, barely registering on the diagnostic equipment, but they bothered him. In his 20 years of space travel, he'd learned that small anomalies often presaged larger problems. Almost absent-mindedly, his hand reached for the bottom drawer of his workstation. From it, he pulled out a worn, leather-bound book. The physical manual was an anachronism in an age of digital information, but Alaric found comfort in its weight and the smell of its pages. It contained emergency protocols and troubleshooting guides for every system on a Class 3 transport vessel like the Serenity Arc. Most of his colleagues mocked him for keeping it. "Have you tried asking the AI?" They would jest whenever they caught him consulting the manual. But Alaric had been in situations where AIs failed and systems crashed. In those moments, the old ways had saved lives. He flipped through the pages until he found the section on navigation systems. Unlike the digital manuals that auto-updated with the latest protocols and troubleshooting algorithms, This physical copy contained older methods, tried and tested over centuries of space travel. Sometimes, Alaric found, the old solutions were the most reliable. 20 minutes later, Alaric joined the other senior staff members in the command center. Captain Darien, a stern man with a military bearing that belied his civilian status, stood before a large holographic display of their flight path. "As you can see," Darien was saying as Alaric slipped into the back of the room, "our course takes us through the eastern edge of the Kalidasa belt. The navigation system has plotted the optimal path, but I want all departments on heightened alert until we clear the field." Lena, standing near the front, caught Alaric's eye and subtly rolled her own. They both knew that the Serenity's systems were more than capable of handling a routine asteroid field. Darien's caution was excessive, but as captain, his word was law. "Maintenance," Darien said, his gaze finding Alaric. "Any system issues I should be aware of?" All eyes turned to Alaric. "Nothing critical, Captain. There have been minor fluctuations in the navigation system during the last 3 jumps, but all diagnostics show normal operations." "Minor fluctuations?" Darien's brow furrowed. "Define minor." "Millisecond delays in response time, temporary power drops of less than 1%. The system corrects itself almost instantly." Lena stepped forward. "I've reviewed Engineer Blackwood's findings. Captain, the fluctuations are well within acceptable parameters. The AI hasn't flagged them as concerning, and that's supposed to reassure me." Darien's voice held a hint of sarcasm. "Run a full system diagnostic before we reach the belt. I want to know that my ship is functioning at 100%. "Yes, Captain," Alaric and Lena responded in unison. As the meeting concluded and the staff dispersed, Taven Rosh, one of the wealthier passengers who had somehow wrangled permission to attend the briefing, approached Alaric. The man's clothes screamed money, tailored from materials that probably cost more than Alaric's annual salary. "Engineer," Taven said, his accent betraying his origins from the inner planets. "I couldn't help but overhear about these fluctuations. Should passengers be concerned?" Alaric forced a reassuring smile. "Not at all, Mr. Rosh. The ship's systems have multiple redundancies. These minor issues are routine." "If you say so," Taven replied, clearly unconvinced. "I have substantial investments riding on reaching Varsith Prime on schedule." "We'll get you there," Alaric promised. "The Serenity Arc 3 is the most advanced passenger vessel in the GC fleet." Taven nodded, though his expression remained skeptical. "Advanced technology is wonderful, until it isn't." As the wealthy passenger walked away, Alaric found himself agreeing with the sentiment. Advanced technology was indeed wonderful, until it failed. And in the vacuum of space, failure often meant death. Back in the maintenance deck, Alaric initiated the full system diagnostic that Captain Darien had ordered. As the AI began its comprehensive scan, he returned to his physical manual, searching for any historical references to similar navigation fluctuations in older vessels. Hours passed as Alaric cross-referenced old reports with current data. The ship entered the Kalidasa belt without incident, its automated systems adjusting course minutely to avoid the scattered asteroids. From his workstation, Alaric monitored the navigation system closely, watching for any sign of the fluctuations. It happened just as they reached the densest part of the belt, a power drop followed by a millisecond delay in the navigation response. Insignificant by most standards, but Alaric's instincts told him something was wrong. "Computer, run a targeted diagnostic on the navigation power coupling," he ordered. "Running diagnostic," the AI responded. "No anomalies detected. All systems functioning within normal parameters." Alaric frowned. The fluctuation was real. He had seen it with his own eyes, but the diagnostics couldn't identify the cause. He turned back to his manual, flipping to a section on legacy systems that might influence newer technology. His concentration was broken by a sudden jolt that sent him sprawling from his chair. The ship's lights flickered, and the familiar hum of the engines faltered. Emergency alarms blared as the artificial gravity wavered momentarily. Warning! The AI's voice had lost its soothing quality, replaced by an urgent tone. Multiple system failures detected. Navigation offline. Propulsion systems compromised. Collision alert. Alaric scrambled to his feet as the ship lurched again. The maintenance deck's emergency lights bathed everything in an eerie red glow. He rushed to his workstation, but the holographic displays were filled with error messages and system warnings. "Computer, initiate emergency protocol 7 Alpha, he commanded. Silence. "Computer, respond!" Nothing. The AI system had gone completely offline, something that should have been impossible given the multiple redundancies built into the ship's design. The ship shuddered again, more violently this time. Through the small viewport in the maintenance deck, Alaric could see asteroids drifting past, some dangerously close to the vessel. Without the navigation system, the Serenity was flying blind through the belt. The door to the maintenance deck slid open, and Lena rushed in, her face pale with panic. "Alaric, what's happening? The command center systems are down, and the AI isn't responding." "Total system failure," Alaric replied, his mind racing through possible solutions. "Have you tried the manual override in the auxiliary control room?" "It's not responding either. It's like every computerized system on the ship has been infected with some kind of virus." Alaric grabbed his manual from the floor where it had fallen during the initial jolt. "We need to get to the emergency control module. It's an older system, less integrated with the main AI. It might still be operational." "The ECM?" Lena's eyes widened. "Nobody's used that in decades. Does anyone even know how to operate it?" Alaric held up his manual. "I do." They made their way through the corridors of the ship, navigating by emergency lighting as the vessel continued to shudder and shake. Panicked passengers huddled in groups, some crying, others praying to whatever deities they believed in. Crew members attempted to maintain order, but their own fear was evident in their strained voices and tense expressions. The emergency control module was located near the center of the ship, protected by multiple bulkheads and security measures. When Alaric and Lena arrived, they found Captain Darien already there, along with several other officers desperately trying to activate the outdated controls. "Captain," Alaric called as they entered, "status report." Darien looked up, his face grim. "Complete system failure. We've lost navigation, propulsion, life support is on emergency power, and the AI is non-responsive. We're drifting through the asteroid belt with minimal maneuvering capability from the emergency thrusters." "What caused it?" Lena asked. "Unknown," one of the officers replied. "One moment everything was fine, the next, chaos." Alaric approached the ECM controls, physical switches, buttons, and readouts that seemed primitive compared to the holographic interfaces throughout the rest of the ship. He ran his hand over the dusty console, memories of his early training flooding back. "Can you operate this?" Darien asked, a note of desperation in his voice. "I think so," Alaric replied, already flipping switches to power up the module, "but it's going to be rough. This system was designed as a last resort, not for precision flying through an asteroid field." "Rough is better than dead," Darien said flatly. As the consoles sputtered to life, ancient displays flickering with basic information, Alaric opened his manual to the section on emergency operations. The ECM offered only rudimentary control, enough to steer the ship and manage essential systems, but without the precision and assistance that the crew had come to rely on. "I need a co-pilot," Alaric said, looking up from the controls. "Someone with quick reflexes and a steady hand." "I'll do it," Lena volunteered immediately. Stepping forward, Alaric nodded, silently grateful. Despite their differences, he trusted Lena's abilities. Follow my lead. I'll handle navigation and propulsion. You manage power distribution and the emergency thrusters. As they worked to establish control of the drifting vessel, more crew members and passengers crowded into the ECM room. Among them was Taven Roche, his expensive clothes now rumpled and his usually perfectly coiffed hair in disarray. "Is someone going to explain what's happening?" Taven demanded, his voice shrill with fear. "We're experiencing a total system failure," Captain Darian explained calmly, though his eyes betrayed his own concern. "Engineers Blackwood and Vosk are attempting to establish manual control through the emergency systems." "Manual control?" Taven looked horrified. "You mean human beings are going to fly this ship?" "That's exactly what I mean," Darian confirmed. "But that's prehistoric. No human can navigate an asteroid field." Alaric ignored the wealthy passenger's panic, focusing instead on the readouts before him. Through the primitive sensors, he could detect several large asteroids in their path. With careful manipulation of the controls, he fired the emergency thrusters, nudging the massive ship into a slightly different trajectory. "Lena, I need more power to the port thrusters," he called. Lena's fingers danced across her section of the console, rerouting emergency power. "You've got it, but I had to divert from non-essential life support. Temperatures in the outer cabins will start dropping." "Better cold than dead," Alaric muttered, echoing Darian's earlier sentiment. For what seemed like hours, Alaric and Lena worked in tandem, guiding the crippled ship through the asteroid field. Sweat beaded on Alaric's forehead as he constantly referred to his manual, following procedures that hadn't been used in decades. The ship groaned and shuddered with each maneuver, its massive bulk responding sluggishly to the emergency controls. The tension in the ECM room was palpable. Officers relayed information from different parts of the ship, reporting on damages and system statuses. Passengers who had made their way to what they perceived as the safest part of the vessel watched in terrified silence as the crew worked. "Large asteroid, 2 o'clock, an officer called out, reading from a basic radar display. Alaric cursed under his breath. The asteroid was too large to avoid completely with their limited maneuvering capability. "Brace for impact," he shouted. "Lena, all power to the starboard shields." The collision, when it came, was less devastating than it could have been. The asteroid scraped along the starboard side of the ship, causing alarms to blare and the entire vessel to shudder violently. Reports of hull breaches in uninhabited cargo sections came in, but the ship's emergency bulkheads had sealed off the affected areas. "Damage report," Darian demanded. "Hull breaches in sections 12 through 14, but bulkheads are holding," an officer reported. "We've lost emergency power to decks 7 and 8. "Casualties?" "None reported yet, but communications are spotty. We're using runners to relay messages from the outer sections." Alaric tuned out the reports, concentrating on keeping the ship moving on a safe trajectory. The ECM's sensors were far less sophisticated than the main systems, offering only a limited view of their surroundings. He was essentially flying blind, relying on instinct and the occasional sensor reading to navigate the treacherous field. "We need to get out of this belt," he said to no one in particular. "The longer we stay here, the higher the chance of a fatal collision. According to the last navigation data before the systems failed, we should be approaching the edge of the belt," Lena said, studying a primitive star chart that one of the officers had managed to print from a backup system. "And then what?" Taven interjected. "We'll be stranded in open space with no way to call for help." "One problem at a time, Mr. Roche," Darian said firmly. "First, we survive the asteroid belt." As they continued their tense journey, Alaric noticed something odd in the ECM's readings. There was a pattern to the system failures. They weren't random, as would be expected from a virus or catastrophic malfunction. It was almost as if— "It's the passenger shuttle," he said suddenly, looking up from the controls. "What?" Lena looked at him in confusion. "The tourist shuttle that docked with us at the last station. It's causing electromagnetic interference with our systems." Alaric flipped through his manual frantically. There's a precedent for this. About 80 years ago, a similar incident occurred with an early model GX-7 shuttle. Its power core emitted a specific frequency that disrupted AI systems. "That's impossible," one of the officers objected. "Modern systems are shielded against all known forms of interference." "Known forms? Yes," Alaric agreed. "But what if the shuttle has been modified? Or what if it's an older model that's been made to look newer?" Captain Darien approached, interest piqued. "How sure are you about this, Blackwood?" "Not completely," Alaric admitted, "but the pattern of failures matches what's described in these old case files." He tapped his manual. "If I'm right, we need to detach that shuttle or somehow neutralize its power core." Darien considered for a moment, then nodded decisively. "It's worth investigating. Officer Trent, take a team to Docking Bay 3 and examine the shuttle. Full hazard protocols." As Trent and several other crew members left to investigate, Alaric returned his attention to navigating the ship. The density of asteroids seemed to be decreasing, suggesting they were indeed approaching the edge of the belt. "I think we're almost clear," Lena said, echoing his thoughts. A sudden impact rocked the ship, throwing several people to the floor. Alaric gripped the console to stay upright as warning lights flashed across the ECM displays. "Direct hit to the aft section," someone shouted. "We're venting atmosphere in sections 20 through 23. "Seal those sections," Darien ordered. "Evacuate all personnel to inner chambers." Alaric's heart raced as he checked the damage reports. The impact had damaged one of the emergency thrusters, further reducing their ability to maneuver. If they took another hit like that— His thoughts were interrupted by the return of Officer Trent, his face flushed with exertion. "Captain, Engineer Blackwood was right," Trent reported breathlessly. "The shuttle's power core has been modified. It's emitting some kind of disruptive field that's affecting our systems." "Can you shut it down?" Darien asked. Trent shook his head. "The shuttle's locked down tight, and our tools aren't working properly near it because of the interference. We'd need to detach it or destroy it." "Detaching is safer," Alaric interjected. "If we destroy it while it's still docked, the explosion could damage our hull further." Darien nodded. "Agreed. Can we detach it manually?" "There's an emergency release mechanism," Alaric said, already flipping through his manual. "It's mechanical, so it shouldn't be affected by the interference." "I'll go," Lena volunteered. "I know where the mechanism is located." Alaric looked up, surprised. "You'll need the manual instructions." "Then give them to me," she said, holding out her hand. Hesitating only briefly, Alaric tore the relevant pages from his precious manual and handed them to her. "Be careful," he said softly. Lena's expression softened momentarily. "Always am," she replied before hurrying from the room. With Lena gone, another officer took her place at the ECM console. Alaric continued to navigate, acutely aware that the ship's situation remained precarious even if they managed to detach the problematic shuttle. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as they waited for news from Lena's team. The ship continued to drift through the asteroid field, each passing moment bringing them closer to the relative safety of open space, but also presenting new obstacles to avoid. Finally, Trent's voice crackled over the emergency communication system. "Captain, we're at the release mechanism. Engineer Vosk is preparing to activate it now." "Understood," Darien replied. "Proceed with caution." Silence fell over the ECM room as everyone waited. Then, a distant thud reverberated through the ship, followed by a subtle shift in the vessel's movement. "Shuttle detached," Trent's voice reported. "It's drifting away from our position." A cheer went up from the assembled crew and passengers, but Alaric remained focused on the controls. "Let's see if our systems recover," he said, watching the primitive displays for any change. Gradually, lights on the main bridge that had been dark began to flicker back to life. The ship's AI, silent since the crisis began, spoke in a halting voice. "System, recovering, running, diagnostics." "It's working," someone exclaimed. But Alaric knew they weren't out of danger yet. The ship had sustained damage, and even with the systems coming back online, they were still in the asteroid field, with limited maneuvering capability. "Captain," he called to Darian, "we need to maintain manual control until we're clear of the belt, and all systems have been thoroughly checked." Darian nodded in agreement. "Maintain your position. Engineer Blackwood, let's get this ship to safety." Over the next hour, as the Serenity Arc 3 limped toward the edge of the Kalidasa belt, systems gradually returned to functionality. The AI's voice became steadier, emergency power was restored to all decks, and the ship's considerable self-repair capabilities began addressing the damage. Lena returned to the ECM room, her face smudged with grease but wearing a triumphant smile. She approached Alaric's station and handed back the torn pages from his manual. "Thought you might want these back," she said. Alaric accepted them with a nod of thanks. "Good work out there." "Couldn't have done it without this," she replied, tapping the pages. "Maybe there's something to your old-fashioned ways, after all." Before Alaric could respond, the AI's voice rang out clearly. "All primary systems restored, navigation online, propulsion at 73% capacity, exiting Kalidasa belt in 3 minutes. A collective sigh of relief swept through the room. Captain Darian approached Alaric and Lena, his stern expression softened by gratitude. "Fine work, both of you," he said. "Once we're clear of the belt and in stable flight, I want a full report on what happened and how we can prevent it in the future." "Yes, Captain," they responded in unison. As the tension in the room began to dissipate, Taven Rosh approached Alaric, his earlier panic replaced by a curious admiration. "I must say, Engineer Blackwood, that was quite remarkable," the wealthy passenger said. "I've never seen anyone handle a crisis with such composure." Alaric shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "Just doing my job, Mr. Rosh." "With a book," Taven added, gesturing to the manual that Alaric still clutched. "In an age of artificial intelligence and automatic everything, you save 5,000 lives with a book." "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways," Alaric replied simply. As the ship finally cleared the asteroid belt and established a stable course toward Varsith Prime, the emergency crews dispersed to address the remaining damages, and passengers returned to their quarters. The crisis had passed, but its impact would linger in the minds of all aboard the Serenity Arc 3. In the days that followed, as the ship continued its journey at reduced speed, Alaric found himself something of a reluctant celebrity among both crew and passengers. The story of how he had guided the massive vessel through the asteroid field, using manual controls and an ancient book, had spread quickly. Lena, too, had gained newfound respect for her role in detaching the problematic shuttle. Preliminary investigations had revealed that the shuttle had indeed been an older model disguised as a newer one, its power core modified for reasons still unknown. GC Security was investigating the matter as a potential act of sabotage or terrorism. One evening, as Alaric sat alone in the ship's observation lounge, staring out at the stars streaking by in the familiar patterns of faster-than-light travel, Captain Darian joined him. "Mind if I sit?" the captain asked. Alaric gestured to the empty seat beside him. "Be my guest." They sat in companionable silence for a moment before Darian spoke. "The GC Oversight Committee has requested a full report on the incident. They're particularly interested in how we manage to navigate manually through the asteroid field. I imagine they are, Alaric said with a small smile. It's not exactly standard procedure. No, it's not, Darian agreed. But it saved the ship and everyone on it. They're talking about implementing new training protocols based on your methods, requiring all engineers to familiarize themselves with manual operation of emergency systems. Alaric raised an eyebrow. Going back to basics, that doesn't sound like the GC I know. Perhaps the GC is learning that not all progress means abandoning the past, Darian replied thoughtfully. Your manual saved us. Blackwood, a physical book that couldn't be hacked or disrupted by electromagnetic interference. It's just a tool, like any other, Alaric said, patting the manual that now rarely left his side. It's knowing when and how to use it that matters. Darian nodded in agreement. The committee also mentioned they might have a new assignment for you once we reach Varsith Prime, something about updating emergency protocols fleet-wide. Alaric groaned. I'm a maintenance engineer, not a bureaucrat. Consider it a promotion, Darian said with a rare smile. Besides, who better to write the new manual than the man who used the old one to save 5,000 lives? Before Alaric could protest further, Lena appeared at the entrance to the lounge. She spotted them and approached, datapad in hand. Captain, engineer, she greeted them formally. I've completed the analysis of the shuttle's remains. Thought you might want to see the results immediately. Darian accepted the datapad and scanned its contents, his expression growing serious. This confirms our suspicions. The shuttle was deliberately modified to disrupt our systems. GC Security will want to see this right away. As Darian excused himself to contact security, Lena took his vacated seat beside Alaric. For a moment, they sat in silence, watching the stars together. I've been thinking, Lena finally said, about what happened in the asteroid belt. Oh, Alaric prompted when she didn't continue. All my life, I've believed that newer is better, that technology would always save us. She turned to look at him directly. But when everything failed, it was a book and human skill that made the difference. Alaric smiled slightly. Technology is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. We created it to serve us, not the other way around. I requested a copy of your manual, Lena admitted. An actual physical copy, not a digital one. Alaric's eyebrows rose in surprise. Really? I thought you considered my attachment to it. What was the word you used? Primitive? Archaic, actually, Lena corrected with a small smile, but recent events have forced me to reconsider my position. Well, well, Alaric chuckled. Lena Vosk embracing the old ways. Never thought I'd see the day. Don't get too excited, she warned. I still believe in progress and technology. I'm just adding another tool to my arsenal. A wise decision, Alaric said approvingly. As they continued to chat, Taven Rosh entered the observation lounge with several other wealthy passengers. Spotting Alaric and Lena, he approached their table. Ah, the heroes of the hour, he said grandiosely. May we join you? My friends have been dying to hear the story of our miraculous escape firsthand. Before Alaric could politely decline, Lena spoke up. Actually, Mr. Rosh, we were just discussing sensitive engineering matters. Perhaps another time. Taven looked disappointed but nodded understanding. Of course, duty first, as they say. Rain check, then. As he rejoined his companions, Alaric shot Lena a grateful look. Thanks for that. Figured you'd had enough hero worship for one day, she replied with a knowing smile. For a lifetime, Alaric corrected. I'm just an engineer doing my job. An engineer who saved 5,000 lives, Lena pointed out. Alaric shook his head. We saved 5,000 lives. Team effort, remember? Fair enough, Lena conceded. Although I have to ask, how did you know it was the shuttle causing the interference? The manual couldn't have been that specific. Alaric hesitated, then admitted, "It wasn't. It was just a similar case from 80 years ago that I remembered reading about. The symptoms matched, so I took an educated guess." Lena stared at him in disbelief. "You risked our only potential solution on a guess?" "An educated guess," Alaric emphasized. "Sometimes that's all we have to work with." Lena laughed softly. "Remind me never to play poker with you, Blackwood." The remainder of the journey to Varsith Prime passed without further incident. The Serenity Arc 3 traveled at reduced speed, its damaged systems gradually repaired by the maintenance crews. Alaric spent most of his time overseeing the repairs and documenting the modifications they'd made to bypass the affected systems. When they finally reached their destination, the passengers disembarked with stories to tell of their harrowing journey through the Kalidasa belt. Many sought out Alaric to thank him personally before they left, much to his embarrassment. On the observation deck, watching the passengers file onto the orbital station that would transport them to the planet's surface, Alaric stood with Lena and Captain Darien. "Quite an adventure," Darien remarked. "Not what any of us expected when we set out from Earth Station." "Adventures are rarely planned," Alaric replied. "That's what makes them adventures." "What will you do now?" Lena asked. "Will you take the GC committee's offer to update the emergency protocols?" Alaric sighed, still uncertain. "I don't know. I'm an engineer, not a writer." "You're a problem solver," Darien corrected. "And right now, the GC's biggest problem is that they've become too dependent on technology that can fail them." "He's right," Lena added. "Think about how many lives you could save if every ship in the fleet had engineers trained in your methods." "Our methods," Alaric corrected with a small smile. "You learned pretty quickly yourself." As they continued their discussion, a GC official approached them, datapad in hand. "Engineer Blackwood, I have a priority message for you from the Oversight Committee." Alaric accepted the datapad with a sense of resignation. The message was brief but clear. He was being reassigned to GC headquarters to head a new department focused on implementing manual backup protocols across the fleet. "Looks like they're not giving me much choice," he said, passing the datapad to Darien. The captain read the message and nodded approvingly. "It's a good assignment, Blackwood. You'll make a difference." "And I'll be stuck behind a desk instead of getting my hands dirty," Alaric grumbled. "Only temporarily," Lena suggested. "Train your replacements, write your protocols, then get back to the real work." Alaric considered this approach. "That might work," he admitted. "A year or two at most, then back to maintenance duty." "I have a feeling you might discover a talent for teaching you never knew you had," Darien said with surprising insight. As they parted ways, Darien to oversee the ship's repairs, Lena to her new assignment on Varsith Station, and Alaric to prepare for his journey to GC headquarters, Alaric felt a strange mix of pride and trepidation. His life was about to change dramatically, all because of a crisis and an old manual. In his quarters, as he packed his belongings, Alaric carefully wrapped his worn, leather-bound manual in protective cloth. It had served him well and would continue to do so in his new role. Perhaps its greatest value had been in reminding everyone that technology, for all its wonders, was still created and controlled by human beings. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. He opened it to find Lena standing there, her own bag slung over her shoulder. "Thought I'd say goodbye properly," she said. "My shuttle leaves in an hour." "Varsith Station, right?" Alaric confirmed. "Coordinating the new defensive grid." Lena nodded. "Something like that. It's a good position. Lots of responsibility." "You'll do well," Alaric said sincerely. "You've got the right mix of technical skill and adaptability." "High praise coming from you," Lena replied with a small smile. "Listen, I wanted to thank you for everything you taught me during the crisis. I've always been so focused on the newest technology, the latest innovations. You showed me the value of understanding the basics, The foundations everything else is built on. Alaric felt slightly uncomfortable with her gratitude. You would have figured it out eventually. You're a good engineer, Lena. Maybe, she conceded, but it might have been too late for the 5,000 people on that ship. She extended her hand. It was an honor serving with you. Engineer Blackwood. Alaric shook her hand firmly. Likewise, Engineer Vosk, keep reading that manual. I will, she promised with a smile, and who knows, maybe our paths will cross again someday. In this galaxy, almost certainly, Alaric agreed. After Lena left, Alaric finished his packing and took one last look around the quarters that had been his home for the past 6 months. His gaze fell on his workstation, where it all began with those mysterious fluctuations in the navigation system, a small mystery that had led to a much larger crisis, and ultimately to a new chapter in his life. As he shouldered his bag and headed for the door, his personal communication device chimed. It was a message from Taven Roche, the wealthy passenger who had been so terrified during the crisis. Engineer Blackwood, the message read, before you depart for your new assignment, I wanted to extend my sincere gratitude for your actions during our recent adventure. My associates and I have been discussing the event at length, and we've come to realize the importance of what you demonstrated, that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most reliable. To that end, we've established a foundation to promote education in basic engineering principles alongside advanced technology. We would be honored if you would consider serving as an advisor. The remuneration would be substantial. Of course, please contact me at your convenience to discuss further. With deepest respect, Taven Roche. Alaric stared at the message in surprise. The idea of wealthy investors funding education in basic engineering principles seemed almost too good to be true. Yet here it was, an unexpected opportunity to spread his philosophy even further. With a thoughtful expression, he pocketed the device and left his quarters for the last time. As he walked through the corridors of the Serenity Arc 3, crew members nodded respectfully or called out farewells. He had never sought recognition or acclaim, but he couldn't deny that it felt good to be appreciated for doing what he believed in. At the docking bay, he paused for one final look at the ship that had been both his workplace and the site of his greatest challenge. Despite the damage it had sustained, the Serenity remained an impressive vessel, a testament to human ingenuity and the pursuit of the stars. Take care of her, he said quietly to the maintenance crew working nearby. We will, sir, one of them replied, and we'll be sure to keep the manual handy, just like you taught us. Alaric smiled at that. Good. Remember, technology fails, but knowledge endures. As he boarded the shuttle that would take him to GC headquarters, Alaric felt a sense of peace settle over him. The crisis had been averted, lives had been saved, and perhaps most importantly, lessons had been learned, not just by Lena or the crew of the Serenity, but by the Galactic Council itself. In his bag, nestled among his clothes and personal items, the manual waited, a symbol of the past's relevance to the future, a reminder that progress didn't always mean abandoning what came before. In a galaxy obsessed with the next technological breakthrough, sometimes the most revolutionary act was to remember the basics. The shuttle's engines hummed to life, and Alaric settled back in his seat, ready for whatever challenges awaited him at GC headquarters. He had a feeling they would be numerous, but he was prepared. After all, he had the manual, and now others were finally ready to read it. As the shuttle detached from the Serenity Arc 3 and moved away from the massive vessel, Alaric caught a glimpse of a maintenance worker consulting what appeared to be a physical manual. He smiled to himself. The revolution had already begun. The station controller's voice came over the comm system. Shuttle Delta 7, you are cleared for departure. Proceed to jump point at your discretion. Acknowledged control, the pilot responded, proceeding to jump point. As the shuttle accelerated away from the station, Alaric thought about all the ships in the GC fleet, all the engineers who relied solely on artificial intelligence and automated systems. Soon, they would learn a new way, or rather, an old way, made new again. The stars stretched into lines as the shuttle entered faster than light travel, carrying Alaric toward his future, a future shaped by a crisis, a manual, and a simple question that would soon become famous throughout the GC fleet. Have you tried reading the manual?